His shot selection was brilliant, and I think there was no defence there from Johnny Fisher.
Footballers don't speak about what happens in dressing room or criticise one another. Is it because of that dynamic?
I think possibly, yeah.
It's important to be objective, right?
Absolutely.
Except, of course, when you're talking about Anthony Joshua.
The current version of Deontay Wilder, of course he has a chance of beating him.
The word swallowed it is a strong word.
But he didn't get stopped by Usyk, did he? He himself stopped himself.
I think that all fighters are, gladiators.
What is it?
He's had enough.
Comparing his career to Callum Smith is like Benn to Marbella.
Someone's got so little charisma, even his shadow looks bored.
Justice Honey is a much harder fight for Fabio Wardley.
Don't start to me about interims. I'm talking about world title shots. I look at it as how the mighty have fallen.
5 fights in the last 5 years or so, and he's only won sort of one of those. Now, he needs to win against Essuman, who's a tough fighter.
Welcome to episode 121 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Today we're joined by the irrepressible and so-called friend of the show, Sam Jones. How are you, mate?
I'm good. How are you? How are you both?
I'm well.
Very
I say
well,
so-called because I see you having little snide digs at some of the observations that we make on this show. That's why I put the so-called bit on there. They wanted to say friend of the show, Spence, but I put the so-called bit on.
No sly digs.
Nice to see you. Right, let's get into the first subject matter, which is the Dave Allen-Johnny Fisher fight. Johnny Fisher is someone that you have an association with. Are you a bit of a bok, Sam, by the way? You're associated with Jack Catterall, you're associated with Johnny Fisher. They're both on losing runs right now.
Losing runs?
I'm joking. Look, the fight itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was in the camp that I thought that Johnny Fisher would get the job done, not because I had any denigration of Dave, but I felt that the nature of the first fight was so unjust, not to the excitable level that perhaps Spencer and Gareth went on, which I understood at the time because commentary comes with emotion.
Yeah, of course.
I felt it was unjust, and I thought if he was going to get it done, he would have got it done on the first night.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty significant performance from Dave, wasn't it?
Yeah, and listen, Dave did what he had to do, and Dave prepared great. I know I've got a very close relationship with Jamie Moore, but Johnny made it easy for Dave in there. The game plan was all wrong, in my opinion. The approach to the fight was not right.
Have you spoken to him since the fight?
Yeah, I spoke to Johnny
Does he know
yesterday.
that?
But he knows that.
I saw him speak about the fact that he talked about that he was fighting on the back foot. And he should have brought it more.
Simon, I've not been in the ring like Spencer, and he will give a more qualified opinion for me. But what I am qualified to give you an opinion on is Johnny Fisher. Now, Johnny Fisher came to America to be Joe Joyce's lead sparring partner for Daniel Dubois when Joe Joyce was firing on all cylinders, when people were saying he's going to be the heir to the throne. Yep. Johnny Fisher was the lead sparring partner. His aggression. Johnny is I'm not saying Johnny's going to be a world champion, no one ever did. But Johnny is an instinctive pressure fighter. And when you take that away from him, it's bare bones. Yeah, you can't teach an instinctive an instinctive pressure fighter to fight like a Vladimir Klitschko. He's never going to be that guy.
Isn't it, that you take away the main advantage. It's a bit like Anthony Joshua fighting Usyk in the first fight, fighting a fight that ultimately suited Usyk.
100%.
I mean, Spence, you were pretty rigid in the face of observations that have been detrimental to you from the Fisher family, about what you said in the first fight. But most of the orthodoxy was leading towards Johnny. You were right in this instance. Good call, mate.
Absolutely. Listen, I just thought that Dave had more to his game. You know, they're at different stages of their careers, and Dave Allen has that experience, and he'd done it from the opening bell. Even though Johnny Fisher started this fight very well, Dave Allen was walking him down. He was making Johnny Fisher work in fifth gear right from the opening bell, really, and he was only in second gear, so it was always going his way. Even if he lost the first couple of rounds or the first few rounds, it was always going his way, and you know, ultimately he got to him. I mean, terrible tactics from Johnny Fisher. You're talking about game plans. You go, well, he's giving Dave Allen the space, but he's leaning back on his back foot with his left hand held high, wide open to the right hand over the top, which is Dave Allen's best shot. You know, he used that shot in the first fight. He landed it a couple of times previous to the fifth round, and then he got him in the fifth round when he went over for the first time, and then the ending was as it was. I mean, shot selection was brilliant, and I think there was no defence there from Johnny Fisher. I think, we talk about game plans and getting the game plan wrong, but we also got to talk about levels. And right now, I think that it just highlighted that Dave Allen, it was at a different level to Johnny Fisher.
Have you heard, I mean, ultimately a lot of noise and I think silly noise really, that created a narrative that really wasn't there. You're a big fan of Johnny Fisher's, and I think you were a big supporter of his. Yeah. And you and Gareth were very emotive about your reaction. But to have got the backlash that you got from Johnny's father, I felt was a bit unnecessary. Have you had any contact with the Fisher family post the fight? No,
I've not had any contact since then, really. You know, like you say, the relationship was good with them. And what we must understand in this business is that the boxers are very sensitive. The fathers are obviously going to be very sensitive as well, but this is an opinion. It's not a personal attack. Yeah. That's what I felt at the time. And as you said, Simon, when you're commentating, you're emotionally involved. You're there, you're wrapped up. Right. Let's talk about Dave Allen as well, who's a lovely kid. You know, he's had a tough time, and he's come back, you know, from tough times as well. So
would you say in this fight? Just to put a sort of tin lid on this subject matter, I mean, I think that people are entitled to their opinions. I think that people are entitled to their reactions. I think their reaction is extreme. I've got children. I know I would defend mine. When you look at the commentary that you and Gareth did, would you do it slightly differently second time round?
No, I'm an emotional guy, and I think I was emotionally involved. And I think that, you know, I said, this is what I said in the commentary, which they heard as well, but chose to ignore. I said, this is not a personal attack on the Fisher family, who I think are very, you know, I love what they stand for, you know, what they built up, the brand that they built. But this was a personal attack on the judges. And I would still be the same. I thought it was diabolical, and I stand by that.
Do you think you get to the stick to some extent, right? Because when I say things, right, they'll try and marginalise me. You don't know nothing. You haven't been in the you know, right? Yeah. But when we made observations about Conor Benn, right? Both of us made observations about Conor Benn, neither one wanting him to be guilty. They went for you, right? We've made observations about Johnny Fisher. Yours was more specific on that instance, but they went for you. Is it because you're a former fighter and it's like this sacrosanct view that you don't speak out of school, like footballers don't speak about what happens in dressing room or criticise one another? Is it because of that dynamic?
I think possibly, yeah. And I think that it's one of those where, you know, you build up relationships with fighters, and I built up a good relationship with Conor Benn and his father. Absolutely. So, but what I'm saying is, if the situation arises like it did with Conor Benn and the 2 failed drugs tests, I'm going to call it out. Yeah. Because we've built up a friendship, you know, I go like, I know what I stand for as well, and I'm not all of a sudden going to go, oh, well, you're my mate, so I'm not going to call it out.
It's important to be objective, right?
Absolutely.
Except, of course, when you're talking about Anthony Joshua. Do we? There's no case here, is there, for a trilogy at this moment in time between Johnny Fisher and Dave Allen? This is done and dusted now, isn't it?
In my opinion, right, Johnny needs to go away and be a prospect, because Johnny, yes, although the opponents have been, listen, they've not been world beaters in front of him, Johnny's never really been able to be a prospect where he's on
because the Babbage fight catapulted.
Not just that, Simon. Yeah. From the minute he turned pro, right, Johnny, and I've got no, I don't work for Johnny Fisher. I haven't for since after the first fight. But I'm saying to Johnny's defence, he's been thrown in with all these people, which is a privilege, by the way. It's a massive...
Why aren't you working with Johnny Fisher anymore?
It just is what it is. It's life, isn't it? I had my opinions.
But I
had my opinions about the first fight.
Did you fall out with them?
No, I have not fallen out with anybody. Simon, right hand to God.
But to be fair, you know, when you're saying, like, you know, Johnny, you know, needs to go back to being a prospect now.
Yeah.
Dave Allen, at that stage of his career, was the right step.
Yeah.
You know, so you're talking about being a prospect or whatever. You go, they were developing him very nicely. And he's gone through those fighters and he's beat Alan Babbage. And when he boxed Dave Allen the first time, he was a huge favourite in there.
Yeah, nobody
so
thought.
It's not about him going back to be a prospect. I think that like the managerial side picked the right fights at the right time for him.
What I was getting at is Johnny needs to go away with it. But if Johnny does want to exercise a rematch against Dave Allen, because I'm not just saying this, I'm not saying he'd beat Dave Allen, but the Johnny Fisher I knew can be a downside more competitive against Dave Allen if he fights the way he fights. Not saying he would come out on top, but he'd do that. But if Johnny Fisher wants a rematch in 4 fights' time, Dave has an obligation to give it him, because Johnny Fisher, effectively, the team handpicked Dave Allen for that fight and gave him an opportunity. And now Dave Allen's on a great run, and good luck to him because he's a good man.
Hold on, They handpicked Dave Allen because they thought they could win.
Absolutely.
They didn't give Dave Allen an opportunity. Dave Allen was a decent name on the resume that had been in with big fighters.
Absolutely.
And they came up short. Let's talk about, equally as importantly, in fact, more importantly, because he's the victor in this fight, Dave Allen. I mean, I thought that Dave was so self-effacing when he came in the studio last week and talked about needing to redeem himself after the fact that he felt he'd swallowed the fight against Fraser
yeah.
Clark. Jamie Moore came in straight afterwards and went, he does it to himself all the time, this kid. He didn't swallow it. I took him out of that particular fight because it was my job to do that as a trainer.
Yeah.
And then you listen to him after the fight. I thought it was such a wonderful... We've had him on the show this morning with Jim White talking about... He's doing the interview from his bed, talking about how many chocolates he's eaten and how much he's having great fun at home, but he wants to get onto his next level because he needs to make some more money because his missus is the money person in the house. But he also talked about, what does winning the British title mean? It means I can get an ensuite bathroom for my kids.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the camera and goes, and by the way, Betty and George, go to bed. I mean, there's something about Dave Allen that just makes you want him to do well.
He's very humble.
What is for him next now?
Absolutely. He's very humble. You want to gravitate towards him. When you know his story, his background, mental health has been a big part of his life, and not taking boxing seriously in many ways. And he's taken the opportunity. He's teamed up with Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis, and I thought they've done brilliantly
lads,
with him.
Yeah.
He's got himself in condition, and he has got talent. And I think that, that victory... Look, he's a realist. He says, look, British title level, if I can win a British title, that's where I see myself at right now.
But he's also saying this morning that he is beginning to subscribe to the view. Jamie Moore is telling him, you are better than you think you are.
Is.
Right? Did I hear this right, that you think he should go in against Deontay Wilder and would beat him?
No, I didn't. They were asking two questions because now the headline's going to be he could be. No, I think this version of the current version of Deontay Wilder, of course, he has a chance of beating him. But with Dave Allen is so much better than what people actually think is. His ring IQ is really good. Dave Allen's a good fighter. He's just never applied himself, and he won't mind me saying this because I know Dave really well. Yeah. He don't apply himself. But Jamie and Nigel have installed this. Listen, mate, you are a good fighter. You are, like, in the camps. Listen, as I say, Jamie Moore was telling me, I wasn't actually watching Dave spar, but everyone was telling me, like, Sam, if Jack Catterall, he can give a good... It's like, Sam, Dave's firing all cylinders here.
I think Dave's biggest problem is that he's never believed in himself. And that self-belief is a huge thing for fighters.
I think
Jamie's installing that.
Exactly,
Them two guys, Jamie and Nigel, have instilled a belief into Dave Allen that's now coming out to it. And I hope Dave goes on to have a great run now because he deserves it. He's a good man.
The mention was, and again, I use the example of what he said, which is what it gives him the opportunity to do. And I think it gives him more than an opportunity to put an ensuite bathroom in, quite frankly. But to fight for the British title.
Yeah.
And that is something that's resident in the rematch situation with David Adelaide and Jamie TKV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you see Dave going against the winner of that particular fight? I'm going to go again with Adelaide, albeit that will probably rankle with other people, but notwithstanding that, I'm going to make that observation
He's been more
again.
active.
But how would you put, if it were David Adelaide, and I don't want to discount Jamie TKV, but if it were Adelaide, how would you expect Dave Allen to go in that particular fight?
Well, this is how I'd put it. It would be a great opportunity for him against David Adelaide. When you're talking about different fighters and owning British titles, you go, look, he's got a real shot at David Adelaide. Adelaide didn't look great against Jamie TKV. The winner of that fight, you put him in there and you go, it's an interesting fight. Yeah. He would start he would start the underdog, but it's an interesting fight. And like I say, speaking to Jamie off the record as well, and he's talking about, the first proper training camp he's had here, Dave Allen. And he said the mindset has been right going into this fight and that self-belief and all of that. He goes, if we've got another 12 weeks to work and another 12 weeks, he's 33 years of age, he's only going to be better. Him versus David Adelaide is a great fight.
I think so too. I mean, you're not going to get all the sparks and jeopardy because he's such a nice guy, but maybe David Adelaide will get him going. We'll see, but that's a great British fight. There's still a section of the boxing fraternity that wants to have this debate about Daniel Dubois and what he represents and what he had happened to him previously that might happen to him again. And we had an example of this with Tony Bellew last week talking about Dubois, which then got him into a bit of a confrontation or a debate remotely with Frank Warren. Let's have a listen to what Tony said last week.
The first time you say no mas, or the first time you say I can't fight no more, is the hardest in your life.
Yeah.
So when you're in that ring, the first time you stop or the first time you quit, it's the hardest.
Yeah.
Once you've done it once, it only gets easier from there on in. But once he starts getting back to that place where this is really, really hard, where Usyk's going to take him like he takes everybody else, he's got that in him. And as a fighter, you can never show that. At some point in our careers, we've all hit a point where we go, I might have had enough here. But we trying to fight our way through it.
What I'm upset about, I was upset the last fight when he said, when we made the match between him and AJ, where he said he'll wind up on a stretcher in an ambulance, which I thought was, from an ex-fighter, it was not really... You can say they get beat. Everyone's got an opinion who's going to win, but to make a comment like that, I thought was pretty disgusting. And he's just got a downer on him. That's up to him. If he don't like him, he don't like him. And I was asked a question, and all I do is respond to what I'm asked. I never brought it up. I was asked, and I just said he's a bit of a jerk, and he doesn't like him, and that's the end of it.
All right, let's put aside the back and forward between Frank and Tony. I mean, there was this... I always remember the observations that Tyson Fury, a young Tyson Fury, made to David Haye about if you swallowed it once, you'll swallow it again alongside you'll swallow your teeth next, and how he could beat him in a race, and Usain Bolt wasn't necessarily a person he needed to beat in a race. Is there any validity in what Tony's saying? I mean, Tony's been in with Usyk. He knows the space that Usyk's going to take Daniel Dubois into, which is, with all due respect, and correct me if you think I'm wrong on where I'm going with this, Jarrell Miller is a lot easier to hit than Usyk. Filip Hrgovic is a lot easier to hit than Usyk. Anthony Joshua is a lot easier to hit than Alexander Usyk. But is there any validity, given that Bellew's been in with Alexander Usyk and knows that Usyk's going to make Daniel work, and he's going to make him work, and they're going to take him into the fight unless Daniel can get him out early and clean him out early, that's going to take Daniel to a place that might remind him of something, energy-wise, fatigue-wise, mental stability-wise, in terms of what Usyk does to fighters, like he did to Tyson Fury, which is told him what he was going to do to Tyson Fury. I'm never going to leave you alone. I'm never going to leave you alone. And he did it. Tyson Fury is a better boxer than Daniel Dubois. Is there any validity in this observation?
I think that the word swallowed it is a strong word. You know, when you look at Daniel Dubois and his defeats in the past, and you talk about that first Joe Joyce defeat, you go, when he went down there and people go, no, he swallowed it. No, he didn't swallow it. He got a broken eye socket.
He got dropped by a jab,
but he had a broken eye socket. When he boxed Usyk, against Usyk, when he got dropped by the jag, he blew a gasket then. He'd done everything. He'd thrown everything in, trying to get Usyk after he'd hurt him with the legitimate body shot that was called a low blow, by the way, just saying. And you go... Look, Daniel at the moment is the most dangerous heavyweight out there right now for Alexander Usyk, and I don't think it's a case of if they get back into old waters and he go there, does Daniel then...
But he didn't get stopped by Usyk, did he? He himself stopped himself.
Well, he had nothing left.
So isn't that an element? I'm a Daniel Dubois fan. No. I want Daniel Dubois to win this fight, and despite the fact
I just think swallowed it's a strong word. I think that swallowed it's a strong word, because I think that all fighters are gladiators. He's had enough. He had enough. Okay. He didn't swallow it. But I think that he had punched himself out. Inexperience,
isn't that
Simon.
Potato?
No, hold a minute. Inexperience played a part of that, right? That's where it was with him. From the Alexander Usyk fight, is this a fair assessment? Is
he a different animal now?
From the Alexander Usyk fight, that was the fight that moulded Daniel Dubois, and he kicked on from there.
Agreed.
So this is a different fight to the first one they had.
Listen, I was with Joe Joyce when he...
That's what I'm going to ask you, because I was at that fight as well.
Yeah, you sat right behind me, I remember, and no one gave Joe a prep. But listen, Daniel Dubois had a lot of pressure on him, because when he turned pro, he was like, this is Mike Tyson. He won Prospect of the Year, same as Talm has done now.
Triple D, the next big thing.
Triple D, the next big thing. And I said, I'm not saying... But I said to Frank Warren after the fight, he'll be a world champion if he gets his mind right. Because I think it was all between the ears with Daniel Dubois. All between the ears. And like what you've just said there, whether he did give up or quit, whatever people want to call it, I genuinely think, I'm not just getting out of it, it's irrelevant now, because after that Usyk fight, you saw something clicked in the Miller fight. And as you say, a lot easier to hit than Usyk, a lot easier to hit. Then he moved. And you look, right now, Daniel Dubois is the informed heavyweight. And the only reason I'm not picking him to win is because I've picked Usyk to lose 4 times and I've looked like an idiot. So I'm not doing it again.
Me too.
But I would love nothing more. But I would love nothing more to see Daniel Dubois get his moment against Usyk, because I think he deserves it, and I think he's a tremendous heavyweight.
Let me rephrase it. Would you be surprised if Daniel Dubois won?
No.
There you go.
No, me either. But again, I'll go back to the point.
But just to let everybody know, the viewers know, that I'm not picking that to happen, because that'll be the 5th time.
I want to... Well, you should go with what you believe with, rather than going with popular consensus of what people say about you. But the fact is that irrespective, and I am, as you know,
Yep.
I'm picking Daniel to win this fight, and I don't care whether I'm right or wrong. I care because I want Daniel to win, but I don't care if the public opinion is you got it wrong again, Jordan, because it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Make your decision and at least own
That's
it, right?
done.
But the fact is that it is unarguable that despite what we make the case, that he's a different fighter. And he is a different fighter because he's got a world strap now.
Yeah.
Right? And he walked into an arena with 96,000 people that were anointing Anthony Joshua. He was there to make up the fight.
He was the gazelle.
Right, exactly. But he is still going to go back into a fight where no one is going to do. There's no deterioration in Usyk unless it goes old overnight, and we haven't seen it happen. Right? There's no deterioration in Usyk. He's still going to go into a fight where the one person that's capable of taking him to a place where mentally he's not able to cope with is Usyk.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it's not. And the questions have not been answered by Jarrell Miller. They've not been answered by Hrgovic, and they've not been answered by Dubois. We know he can take punishment. We know that he's got the guts to bite down on his gum shield. But when you've got somebody as clever and as creative as Usyk, that did to Bellew what he did to Bellew, that did to Dubois what he did to Dubois, that did to Tyson Fury, took him into a place that they didn't think they could be taken to, and then it's the mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And I suppose the only way we're going to know is when it comes on top this time around.
I think he's a new man. I think he's a new man.
Listen, I think it's fair to say that Daniel Dubois is a massively improved fighter since their first fight. Is Alexander Usyk improved since their first fight, or has he aged slightly more since the first
he now,
fight?
38?
We have seen no signs of that. But what I'm saying is, it makes it far more interesting.
Talking about single punch digs and fighters that are capable of invoking those, the potential fight in the light heavyweights, which by the way is a great division, between Callum Smith and Anthony Yarde. We had Tundi, Anthony Yarde's manager, on the other day. Before I get into the the mechanics of that fight, let's have a listen to the conversation between myself and Tundi last week.
For you to make such a statement, who has Callum Smith fought and beat of a level where you can say they are world-class fighters? Because guess what?
Tundi, put it back to you then. Put it back to you then about Anthony. Who's Anthony beat?
Lyndon Arthur fought Bivol and lost on points. Bivol is now the undisputed champion.
But Tundi,
we fought Beterbiev. We lost in a fight a year. Beterbiev was the undisputed champion.
Argument, I understand.
Callum Smith has fought both guys and never even looked like he won a round. So how have you managed to say that he's in a better position, a better place than Anthony Yarde?
Because I think he's a better fighter than
Callum
Anthony.
Smith has only ever beaten a fighter like George Grove, a British fighter, at the end of his career. Was Anthony Yarde competitive against Kovalev? Yes, he was.
Yeah,
he
but he
almost
lost.
stopped him in the 8th round.
Right, there was a lot more to that conversation about duckers. You know, Tundi alluded to the fact that he was now suggesting that Callum Smith had ducked Anthony Yarde. He was alluding to the fact that Josh Boazzi had ducked Anthony Yarde. Now, I know that not to be the case. I know that not to be the case because I was there involved in the discussions when the fight was being made, preferably contractually with Anthony Yarde, and it had to be Willie Hutchinson to keep Josh Boazzi comfortable with his current promoter, and he didn't want Hutchinson, he wanted Anthony Yarde. I also know that Anthony Yarde was in dispute with Frank Warren at the time, so I think it's a bit strong. But when you listen to some of that conversation, what do you both take away from the observations about who has Callum Smith fought, and what is the observation based upon that he can beat Anthony Yarde?
That's crazy. You can't say who was Callum Smith beat. You know, when he won the Ali Trophy, you know, at the World
George
Boxing
Groves.
Super Series.
He will say George Groves at the end of his career.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. He beat George Groves, you know, and you look at that and you just go, look, he's been competing at world level for a long time, Callum Smith, and you've got to give him his props and you've got to pay him his respects. And going into that fight, as I said to Sunday, Callum Smith would start the favourite going off the back of that last victory. You know, when you look at that against Joshua Boazzi, you go, he performed and he rolled back the years. And if you look at Anthony Yarde's last performances, and he's a fighter I love, by the way, Anthony Yarde, and I do believe that if he doesn't win a world title, he would have underachieved. But you go, in the last couple of fights, we haven't seen nothing to suggest that he would start favourite against a former champion in Callum Smith. Great fight, by the way, but I think there's some of the comments that Tunde was making there were quite insane in many ways.
look,
quite absurd.
First of all, Anthony Yarde is one of the best promoted fighters in British boxing in recent memory, because Frank Warren got him to a world title shot after beating, let's be honest, nobody could. I can't. He got to Kovalev. Kovalev was past his best. But Anthony is a great fighter. And by the way, I am a really big fan of Anthony.
I'm a massive fan.
Him as a person as well. But comparing his career to Callum Smith is like Benidorm to Marbella. Callum Smith, it is. Come on, it's a fact. Like Callum Smith is a proven world-class fighter, and he's fell short at the elite level. The elite level. But Anthony Yarde, I think Anthony Yarde can win a world title. I do. I think he can win a world title.
I think he had a great chance against Kovalev.
Yeah,
he had a great chance in that first fight.
Yeah, it was inexperience that lost him that fight.
And against Beterbiev as well. Let's have it right. That was one of the fights of the year. I mean, the performance he put up.
But that's what Anthony can do.
Agreed.
Yeah, he can fight. On his day, he can fight, and it's a great fight. But I think that, some of the comments from Tunde there were quite strong.
Tunde's passionate, though, isn't he?
Yeah,
defending his guy.
And he's in the business of representing. I mean, people would suggest that somewhere along the line that maybe Tunde hasn't helped Anthony Yarde's career. Other people might be more prone with suggesting that he has. It depends upon what point of view. I think that Tunde was trying to dominate the conversation, which is a bit ironic given the person on the end of it was me. So I get on with it. I do it to other people, so I get it back. But do you think it's fair for me? I mean, I think Callum Smith is a better fighter. I saw Paul Smith's reaction to it, and we'll talk to Paul about it directly himself, but he wasn't particularly impressed with Tunde's observations. Do you think... my observation, Callum Smith, who was, started at super middleweight, now at light heavyweights. Anthony Yarde is a bona fide, fully fledged, always has been light heavyweight, right, in his professional career. Obviously, Callum's now stepped up in the latter parts of his career, was a super middleweight when he was a world champion, and fought and lost only to Canelo Alvarez. Beats John Wilder, went on to have decent fights against Canelo. Am I right to suggest, or am I completely out of order, to suggest that Callum Smith is, in fact, the better fighter of the two?
No, he's proven. He's proven. Yeah, because he is proven. And like I say to you, going off that fight against Joshua Buatsi, who's a great fighter as well, and he showed that he still has a lot left in the tank. Boxing IQ was there, the grit,
desire,
the fight.
Everything.
I never felt that. I always thought that Buatsi was going to maybe win that fight, because I thought when it gets tough, you're going to question, what desire has Callum Smith got left there? Well, he proved us wrong, and he showed that he's got a lot left there, and that's why you go, at this stage, going in, look, it's for Anthony Yarde to prove us wrong.
Absolutely.
But Callum Smith will start the favourite going into that one.
But deservedly so, though. Deservedly
that's
so.
What I'm saying.
Absolutely right.
On merit.
Listen, like I say, Anthony Yarde, I've always thought, I want him to be a bit more active as well. And I think that, given the opportunity in the right fight, Anthony Yarde can win a world title. I'm not saying he can't beat Callum Smith, but we have to go on credentials here. And after his last display against Joshua Buatsi, Callum Smith is a proven world-class fighter. And Anthony Yarde has competed at the world level, but he hasn't got a world-class win.
Of course, Tunde and Anthony will say that actually only goes to prove that Josh Buatsi wasn't as good as you all lot think he was.
Josh Buatsi's a brilliant fighter.
Yeah, I think so too.
He's a brilliant fighter.
We'll get Paul Smith in to have his right to reply, which I'm sure he will next week when he comes on, or whenever he's coming on next. So let's get into some heavyweight discussion about the heavyweights, obviously. I see Dillian Whyte had some nice words for me last week. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Someone's got so little charisma, even his shadow looks bored. But we've got Dillian coming out to fight against a fighter that... no, he's not coming out to fight Tete. He's already fought Tete. I made a big production out of it, didn't we? Fraser Clark knocked him out in one round. Where do we see Dillian and the opportunities that exist for him?
Well, Dillian's at that stage of his career where he wants the big fights, and you're looking at someone like Joseph Parker, who's struggling to get a fight, and you go, look, run that back. That would be a good fight. Joseph Parker now has that momentum.
What's the motivation for Joseph Parker for that fight?
He can't get a fight. That's the motivation.
Is it?
Absolutely. What I'm saying is that if you look at Joseph Parker, what's he had? Like one fight in the last 14, 15 months or so, and it doesn't look like he's going to be fighting now till September, possibly. He's going to need that some sort of tune-up. Dillian Whyte is that prime name. I think that Dillian holds a victory over him, and that's where I'd like to see.
Do you not think
there's a more?
Do you not think maybe Lawrence Coley would feature in that conversation?
He would feature in the conversation. Of course he would. Of course he would.
I don't think Dillian would want to fight Lawrence Coley, because Lawrence Coley's he's looking strong in it heavyweight after his debut, and I think Dillian is he didn't look the Dillian of old in the last fight against Ebenezer Tete, who Daniel Dubois obliterated in a round about 5-6 years ago. But Dillian Whyte has the luxury of the fact that he is commercially still he's a big name. He's a name, and he's always going to be in the frame for a big fight. But like I say with the Josie Parker fight, I know what you're saying, Simon, like what's in it for his fight, but he holds a win over him and he'll think, yeah.
That's the sell.
Why there's no fights for me? Let's get it on. It's a logical fight to make.
Moses Talma is out this weekend, and also beyond this weekend, which is they're not going to look beyond, but Frank is talking about, A, he expects him to have a world title shot in the next 18 months, and B, he's looking for him to fight Martin Bakole. What do you think of those observations?
Listen, it's going to be more difficult to hold Moses back than let him go, if I'm totally honest, because we've seen the star potential that he's got.
But sticking him against Bakole.
No, but Frank Warren
is a great matchmaker.
He's a great matchmaker.
He's a brilliant,
and he will understand that. And you go like stick him in there. You look at you're taking a calculated gamble, and you talk about Martin Bakole and getting that last minute opportunity. Going in there and getting obliterated in 2 rounds, and coming in, terribly overweight.
What do you think about that?
But you understand that.
I got not into trouble because I think most of the people agree with me, but Martin Bakole turned up to that fight in terrible condition, and it was also disrespectful to the fact that he's getting paid millions of pounds and he's wobbling into that fight. I think if you're asking me who would win out of the fight, on current form, Moses Atama would blast him out.
Absolutely.
So I think Moses Atama is the best prospect, not heavyweight prospect, the best prospect in boxing.
This was my concern about Martin Bakole. He then gets that opportunity against the Jaguar that he was originally going to fight for the final eliminator.
And he fluffs his lines.
He gets that opportunity and then comes in terribly overweight again. From Frank and Moses' point of view, you go, well, that's the obvious fight to make. Let's take that now.
Isn't that sort of blot on Billy Nelson's landscape? Because Billy was making a lot of noises about what he felt that Martin was entitled to. He talks about needing nutrition. What he needs is a lock on the larder. But the fact of the matter is that Billy Nelson is also responsible for the well-being of Martin Bakole, and he must know that putting him into a fight at 300 pounds,
listen, Billy Nelson took a fight on 24 hours' notice because the cheddar was right.
Yeah.
And I know, listen, to Billy's defence, he was getting a lot of stick about, Martin's chubby going into that fight. But it's not really down to Billy Nelson to stop Martin Bakole eating. He's got to have some self-discipline to stop doing that. But look, he's fluffed it, Martin Bakole, because he had me as a believer. That's what I was more annoyed about. I was thinking Bakole's he's going to beat everybody.
Let's have this right. He didn't just have us as believers, that he has got potential, massive potential.
Martin's a great fighter.
But to be a great fighter and be an elite fighter, you have to have everything. You've got to be disciplined. And Martin Bakole at the moment, the one thing that he hasn't got, yes, he's got star quality and he's got potential, but he's got no discipline. That's a big problem.
But also, by the same token, we've got a trainer in Jamie Moore suggesting that that we can influence the direction of travel for Dave Allen. Then Billy Nelson has to say the same thing.
Absolutely.
But interestingly, Duke McKenzie, who I like Duke McKenzie's observations because they're normally to the point and he stands them up. He is talking about Moses Atama avoiding someone like Dave Allen because it's too early for him.
No.
So how do we square that circle?
Too early for Moses Atama?
Yeah.
No,
Dave Allen won't fight Moses Atama. Do you know why? Because Jamie Moore will look at that fight, and Dave, because Dave is a clever guy. I think... No thanks, lads.
You don't put Dave
Allen
nowhere near Moses Atama.
No, nothing in it for Dave Allen.
Yeah, no, but it's just like it's that you're talking about the levels and whatnot, and this kid, I wouldn't go nowhere near that.
If Moses Atama can take a whack on the chin, you're looking at the next real big thing in boxing. Full stop.
Obviously, we've got Fabio Wardley against Justice Hunter coming up relatively shortly. Obviously, I made a bit of a tip myself the other day, which you corrected before, suggesting that maybe Dillian could fight Fabio Wardley, forgetting that he managed him, and that's why Dillian gave me a smack, and deservedly so. Obviously, Fabio Wardley takes on Justice Hooney on the 7th of June at Portman Road. Let's have a listen to Justice himself talking on talkSPORT last week.
I think he's going to come out strong. And it's gonna be a war. If it does go the distance, it's gonna, like you said, be a bloodbath. Then I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm willing to go to the deep waters and take myself to really dark places to get this win. So I got the call up 5 weeks out, and now I think we're just over 3 weeks ago. So it's almost there, and it's a massive opportunity for myself. Us over in Australia, I believe, we don't really get as many opportunities. Like, we're not as well known. So for me to come over here and, get the call up to take on a big fight like this, I had to take it with both hands just to get my name out there and, get people talking about me.
Right. Justice is ranked number 1 with the WBO. comes out of the same camp as Opetaya, so immediately people will think of Jai Opetaya because of his domination of the cruiserweight division. Do you like this kid? I mean, we've spoke about him last week about getting himself into trouble with Kevin Lerena.
Yeah.
But do you think this is
a fight? This kid can fight. You know, he's got great amateur pedigree. He puts his shots together well. He punches and bunches. He's got quick hands as well. This is a dangerous fight. More dangerous fight than Baby Miller.
Is it?
Was for absolutely, absolutely for Fabio Wardley. This kid's young. He's hungry, and like I say, he can put shots together. He's a good body puncher, and speed is key as well. It's a dangerous fight. I mean, fair play to Wardley for taking the fight because Justice Hooney really doesn't bring, you know, you've got a lot to lose here and not a lot to gain by beating Hooney. But it was only had 12 fights.
The downside is Justice Hooney's profile's not that big. Like you wouldn't really know him over here. Obviously, I've followed Justice Hooney. He was a tremendous amateur. He's got good legs. He's fast. He's a completely, like what Spencer's just saying, he's a completely, not disrespecting Jarrell Miller, but Jarrell Miller's on the tail end of his career. He would come and Justice Hooney is a much harder fight for Fabio Wardley. But look, Fabio have confidence of the fact how he's dealt with an Olympian at the Fraser Clark fight. But much harder fight, much harder fight, and massive credit. Listen, Fabio's a game as a badger and he fight anybody. So I'm really intrigued with that fight. But I cannot believe they've took that fight, to be honest with you.
But I mean, let's be fair to Fabio. Every single time he's been put into a fight, people have questioned whether it's a more challenging fight than he's ready to be in at the time. David Adelaide was put in that category, dealt with him. Fraser Clark, albeit the first one was a draw, the second one was conclusive. To summarise, do we still believe that Fabio comes out of this victorious, or do we think it's more challenging than just a black and white Fabio wins?
No, I think Fabio wins the fight, but it is more challenging. For sure, it's more challenging. Justin Hooney is heavyweight
No one's hearing
boxing.
the final bell, are they? No one's hearing the final bell.
It probably ends before the final bell, yeah. But Hooney, I'll tell you what, though, Hooney showed a lot of character against Kevin Lerena. He got hurt in the second and in the 10th, and he hung in there.
Fabio hits harder.
Fabio
hits harder than Kevin Lerena.
Yeah, he does. But no, Kevin Lerena's very heavy-handed.
Look what he done to Dubois.
He's very heavy-handed. And Daniel Dubois. So you just look at it and you go, look, it could be one of those fights like what we saw against Fraser Clark in that first one, Fabio Wardley, but catches a lighter. But both guys show a lot of character.
And you've also got to bake into the equation that Fabio's fighting in front of his home crowd.
Yeah,
so he's going to want to go in there and put a show. But it's going to be a great fight. Another night of great boxing. Okay, subject dear to your heart. Sam, Jack Catterall comes back into the ring and fights Harlem Eubank.
Yeah.
I have my views on that fight, but more importantly, what yours are. What's the thinking behind that?
It's commercially a good fight. The Eubank's the most talked about name in British boxing at the moment. And look, Jack came off a disappointing narrow defeat against Barboza for the interim world title in the last time out. So rather than take a fight against somebody no one's heard of in the top 15, an available name is Harlem Eubank. It's at 147. Yeah.
I mean, so Jack Catterall's at a stage in his career where he has to hitch his wagon to the Eubank name to be able to achieve economic, commercial and fighting outcomes on the back of being dreadfully treated over the Josh Taylor fight in terms of losing that fight, which he won, taking forever to get Josh Taylor back into a ring, having to fight Jorge Linares, having to fight Regis Prograis, and having to fight Arnold Barboza, not getting a world title shot. And don't start to me about interims. I'm talking about world title shots. And now he's got to go and hitch his wagon to Harlem Eubank. He's got no one on his record.
Simon Barboza and Jack was a final eliminator, interim world title.
He shouldn't have needed a final eliminator. Regis Prograis should have been that, shouldn't he, Spence?
Sure, but that's
absolutely.
It's not the way the world works, though.
You have, though? But what I'm saying is,
in
look
an
at the
ideal
names
world,
that he'd beaten. He should be a world champion.
Jack should be a world champion, and he will be a world champion. But right now, as you know, you're not daft. There's no belts available right now. Yeah, Jack lost. We have to call. He lost.
Accepted.
He lost. Yeah, we have to accept the fight.
One fight more than he should have had to fight for a world title, by the way.
So Jack comes back, right? Some fighters come back after a loss, and they'll fight an 8-rounder. Jack straight back in. Harlem Eubank's undefeated. We don't know how good Harlem Eubank is, but it's a fight that will sell a lot better than fighting somebody in the top 10 that nobody cares about, because that would be slagged off.
Jack's future, where does that lie? In the super lightweights or in the welterweight division?
I wouldn't.
So where does Jack's future lie? Is he moved up permanently, or is he coming back down?
Jack can fight at 140 still, right?
Okay.
And if the opportunity's there, Jack will fight. There's a Dalton Smith fight that can happen in the future. Right now, if you're looking, like people keep saying to me, fight Dalton Smith. Listen, Dalton Smith is not going to fight, and Dalton Smith is someone I respect. He's Grant I respect. If you're looking after Dalton Smith, you're not handpicking Jack Catterall as a fight now because your next fight is for a world title.
Why do you think Eubank's handpicked Jack Catterall?
Eubank shouted at Jamie Conlon, who looks after Harlem Eubank.
Eubank's handpicked.
Yeah, no,
Jack
yeah,
Catterall.
that's correct.
Eubank's picked him.
Jamie Conlon rang me and said, and I was thinking about making Conor Walker, the current British champion, to fight Harlem Eubank. Jamie Conlon's rang me and said, why not Catterall? And obviously I'm spat my tea out because I'm thinking he's on something here. And then I thought, thinking, yeah, I like it. I like the fight.
The economics of the fight.
I like the fight.
What does it do for Jack, besides boost his bank balance? It doesn't give him any more... Does it give him more credibility? I mean...
Harlem's have got a fantastic rankings in the 147 division,
yeah.
and Jack will have chances in the 147. All I'm saying is, right, and it's not a money grab, it's a fight that the British public can get behind.
Do you agree with that?
That's a fact.
Were there any other...
I look at it. Do you know how I look at it?
Were there any other opportunities down at super lightweight for Jack before taking this fight?
Yeah, you can have another highly ranked WBO contest, for sure. Jack's still highly ranked in 140 division.
I mean, I look at it, and I understand what you've said. I look at it as how the mighty have fallen for Jack. That's how I look at it. I look at the guy, the fact that the guy, and again, I'll rehearse what I've said a moment ago, which is should be a 4-belt champion.
Agreed.
Right? Didn't get that. Took forever to drag Josh back into that rematch.
Agreed.
Got no reward for that, really, besides the fact that ultimately he laid a ghost to rest.
Yeah.
Right? Has to fight Linares. OK, it's an aging Linares, but still a dangerous Linares. Has to fight Regis Prograis on the back of a decent performance from Regis Prograis. Then has to go into one more fight than I think he should have had to go into for a world title. And his reward now is he gets hand-picked by Harlem Eubank.
Simon, this is the world. Unfortunately, but this is what I'm saying. Jack, let's look at it right. Jack Catterall has headlined 5 times now in this country. His profile's grown. His bank balance has grown. Unfortunately, he came unstuck against Barboza. There was nobody more irritated than me, Simon, when that happened. I was thinking, oh, my life, I can't believe this is happening. But what do you do after that? You can't just go, do you know what? It's an easy world, isn't it, to say, we need a world title shot. Jack deserves to... He's more deserving of a world title, to be a world champion, than anybody, Jack Catterall, after what happened to him. But ultimately,
Agreed.
you've got to rebuild it, but you've got to rebuild it and do it smartly. You've got to be involved in fights that people care about. How good's Harlem Eubank? We don't know. Is Senior going to be rocking in with his sheriff badge? It's a fight.
That's why you've said it.
Exactly.
It's the most bankable name in British boxing right now.
It's a fight that people will be interested in, and you will be as well, Simon.
It's a kind of strange one for Jack, this one, isn't it? Because if he loses this fight, not sure where it leaves him.
Well, it shows a
Besides
confidence.
slightly richer.
But to be fair, what Sam's saying there is it shows the confidence in his own ability because he's taking fights like this saying, listen, I need tick-over fights, I need names on the record, I'm getting well paid for it, and it opens up opportunities in the welterweight division, the super lightweight division. So, I think that commercially it could work really well for him.
How much of a jump up for Eubank is this, Spence?
Oh, huge. If you're talking about jump
Benidorm
ups...
to Marbella.
No. I'll tell you where it's at.
That's not far.
I'll tell you where it's at.
Places.
You're talking about jumping up, from no disrespect to the people like Tyrone McKenna or whatever, you're jumping up from British level to world level, and you're missing out the Commonwealth, European, and all the other little belts in between that. It's a huge step up, for Harlem.
Both the same age, by the way.
Yeah.
People keep saying, Jack's fighting a prospect. Harlem Eubank, 31, Jack, 31. Shut up.
Well, but that's built out of the next gen dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can be the next gen till you're 107, according to the Eubank family.
But no, we're fully confident Jack is going to do a complete number on him. And Jack Catterall will be back straight in the mix.
But to some
and we'll
extent,
get him a world title fight.
To some extent, it's a zero-sum game for Jack, and there's no real loss for Harlem, is
High
there?
risk, low
Harlem
rewards,
wins on. If he wins something, he's got.
Harlem's under pressure though because of his name. He's just watched his cousin being a fight of the year, best fight I've probably ever seen in this country, right? So he's looking at it thinking, I've got to uphold the family name.
But also for Jack, from Jack on the flip side, for Jack, he's under pressure because he loses that world status if he goes and loses to Harlem.
Jack's a proven world level fighter. Jack, let's not make any bones about it. Jack Catterall has to win.
When I'm firing on all cylinders, I can beat every fighter in the world.
Yeah, perfect fight for Essuman.
He brings the fire. I'm back to being the hunter.
This will be a colossal test. Oh, great left hand. Unbelievable scenes. This is what world champions are made of. He's done it.
And it will be something special.
this weekend, live on DAZN, we've got the return of Josh Taylor, stepping up a weight class, fighting Essuman, who I watched beat Chris Kongu on the Liam Smith, Chris Eubank Jr. undercard a couple of years ago. This is not a cakewalk for Josh, is it?
No, listen, this is a tough fight for Josh. Essuman's one of those guys that sort of brings it. You know, he's very tough. He's got an unbelievable engine.
Yeah, the engine.
And we saw him against Owen Cooper last time out when he had to pick himself off the floor. In one of these knockdowns, you go, he is out before he hit the floor. He got up, turned it around, and ended up knocking Cooper out himself in the 10th round. I mean, look, Essuman is not an easy fight. He's only lost to Harry Scarf before. And you go, you know, it's about opportunity. And this kid will bring it. He's 36 years of age, I know that. But he's still a very dangerous fight for someone who's moving up in weight, like Josh Taylor. And if you look at Josh Taylor, I was looking down his record. I think the last victory, really, you're looking at him having, legitimate victory in my eyes, I'm talking about, is Ramirez. You go, because the Catterall fight, I thought that he'd lost that, but he didn't. So you look at...
Let's not go into that.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into all that. But what I'm saying is, so you look at that and you go, he's had 5 fights in the last 5 years or so, and he's only won sort of one of those. You go, so he's in a dangerous place right now. He needs to win against Essuman, who's a tough fighter.
It's the same as Jack would just said. He's got to win. Like, Josh Taylor's got to win. And listen, a lot of people listen, I've had my words with Josh, and I will, but let's not forget the fact, undisputed, 4-belt champion. Josh Taylor's a great fighter. And if Josh Taylor's the Josh Taylor we know, and Josh Taylor that turned up against Jack Catterall in the last fight, Josh Taylor will come through this fight.
100%.
But Echo is as tough as a pub steak. He will give it to Josh Taylor. So Josh has got to be on his A game, but I expect him to do, and I hope he does as well, because he's front of his fans and he deserves his homecoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that we would all, without putting any additional pressure on Josh, he would know it himself, that this fight is probably make or break for him.
Absolutely.
Now, if it's make, right, where does Josh Taylor go? You've got the 147. Is it Barrios? I don't think it's Boots Ennis, is it?
No, listen, Barrios would be a great opportunity for him because he's probably the weaker of the champions. He holds that WBC belt, and it's a winnable fight for Josh Taylor. I think that we're in a position here with Josh now to go, he's talking about make or break, but we find out exactly what he's got left now, as in... He should be an overwhelming favourite against Echo Essuman. You know, a guy, when you're looking and doing comparisons and talking about levels, Josh Taylor do you
think, I mean, Josh has still got the juice left? And, you know, obviously, I think we probably think, with no discredit to Jack, that making the weight was a problem for Josh, even though he denied it emphatically. You don't have that, Sam.
I promise you, I know Josh's nutritionist, Carl Evans. I'm telling you now, it's not a problem for Josh to make 140.
But do you think he's going to be better for being up at 147 now?
I just think that I'm not just saying this to gas Jack up. If you watch the fight, they were both brilliant in that fight. If Josh Taylor turns up how he did against Jack Catterall 2, Josh Taylor will win the fight.
Do you see any parallel universe, given the fact that we're talking about names being indexed to people, that ultimately makes economic sense?
Yeah.
Do you see that Josh Taylor taking on Conor Benn at 147 is a fight that would be made?
I think it's a huge fight because of Josh Taylor and his resume, and Conor Benn, and, you know, coming off the back of that defeat against Chris Eubank Jr. But he stopped Rose in that fight because he answered a lot of questions about himself, about his durability, about whether he could compete at world level. And, you know, he delivered, Conor Benn. So I think that's a huge fight, Josh Taylor versus Conor Benn. And it's a fight that Josh Taylor's shown interest in as well.
Right, for you guys out there, don't miss Josh Taylor versus Echo Essuman this Saturday, live only on DAZN. Sign up at DAZN.com/boxing. Right, that's it for episode 121 with Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Sam Jones, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
And we'll see you guys next time we're out.